Well, I'm Jim Reed, running for Congress in the 1st Congressional District in California, and I want to thank you all for coming today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I've had a really wild last 3 weeks, and I want to tell you about it. It's been wild not only from a personal standpoint, but also from the standpoint of the campaign. Let me first start by talking about sort of the gorilla in the room that I haven't been talking about, my campaign hasn't been talking about, the media hasn't been reporting. But obviously I'm wearing a cast. 3 weeks ago, I was out on I-5 putting up campaign signs. I started in Redding, I was working my way south. Had just put up the last campaign sign for the night. It was a Thursday night. And I was ready to head home, got back on the freeway. Got it up to 70 miles an hour, put it in cruise control. I was driving my old S10 Chevy pickup truck with almost 300,000 miles on it. And all of a sudden, some mechanical problem occurred. I was in, my brakes were locked up, and I wasn't pushing on the brake pedal. And so I tried to keep the car on the road, but finally it was unsuccessful. It went off to the side, and it rolled 4 times. And I remember this about it. The first roll was uneventful. The second roll, my driver's side window broke. And I'm thinking that's a bad thing if my head goes out that window on the next roll. So I'm struggling to keep my body inside the truck, and it rolled 2 more times, ending in a position where it was the driver's door was down. And people were on the scene immediately, and I could tell right away that my only injury was a broken arm. But, you know, on those kind of injuries, they insist on taking you to the hospital in an ambulance on a board. It was interesting, on the way to the hospital, the EMT who was in the ambulance with me is looking at me and looking at me. He says, "I guess I voted for you in the primary." Then when I get to the hospital, before anybody even sees me, I'm hearing the head nurse telling all the doctors, I saw him, that's Jim Reed at the Red Bluff Tea Party." So I got a lot of attention, and the emergency room did a really good job putting my arm back into the right place. In fact, I was told that if I didn't move my arm at all, just laid in bed basically for 6 weeks, nothing further would have to be done. It would be healing on its own. Well, I made my campaign events the next day. I was driving my car, flying my airplane within 2 days, and unfortunately the result of that was that bones started pulling apart, and last week I had to go in for surgery, and they put a plate in my arm, so all those bones are now going to be in the right place, and I can go about my campaign without anything disturbing it.
Robo-Reed!
But you know something? Having a near-death experience like that is something that's got to affect you. And we went back and looked at the truck the next day, and just looking at the truck, it's a wonder that anybody could actually survive. And boy, let me tell you, shout out for General Motors and a Chevy S10 pickup truck, because it saved my life.
Hey, you're good to be here.
And you know something? When you reflect on it, and being in the middle of a campaign like this, it really just reinvigorates you to get out there and try even harder. And I've noticed it not only personally, but my campaign organization is working harder than ever. The volunteers in the campaign are really working hard. In retrospect, the fact that I survived and now we're working even harder, it probably was a good thing. So anyway, that was 3 weeks ago. Then 2 weeks ago, well, that was the debate. And I'm sure most of you have heard a little bit about the debate. It was a Tea Party event here in Redding, and my opponent said, or I would say misspoke, when he indicated that he felt that if that research showed that if a woman had an abortion, that it made her more likely to get cancer later in her life, and he felt doctors should explain that to somebody who was thinking about abortion. And of course that he had to retract that, because that scientifically is not the case. But the effect of that was that the story, our campaign, has now gone national. And you can read about it. You can read about it on the East Coast. In fact, the LA Times this weekend ran an article saying there are 6 candidates in the congressional race that need a science course. And they listed them, and of course, number 1, you would guess this, out of Missouri, is Todd Aiken, who you probably know said that if a woman is legitimately raped, she has the ability to shut her body down so that she doesn't become pregnant. So he was number number 1 on that list of 6 people needing a science course. But guess who was number 2? Doug LaMalfa, for saying that abortions could cause cancer. So back to the debate for just a minute. You recall that I ran against Wally Herger 2 years ago, and one of the big things was that Wally Herger wouldn't debate me. And that was a big disappointment to me. And having the chance to debate early in the campaign 2 weeks ago was really a great thing. And now we have opportunities for 3 or 4 more debates right away, even on television. But Doug LaMalfa has not agreed to a single debate. And one of the reasons I'm here for this press conference today is to specifically challenge Doug LaMalfa to another debate. I will debate him any place, anywhere. All he has to do is give me the word, and I will be there. So that was 2 weeks ago. Now let's talk about last week. Mitt Romney now famously said that 47% of the people don't pay taxes and are dependent on the government. Well, guess what? Doug LaMalfa's campaign came out with a statement concerning Mitt Romney's statement. And what the statement, it wasn't Doug LaMalfa himself, but his campaign came out with this statement saying Mitt Romney was probably painting with too broad of a brush, but Doug LaMalfa agrees we have too many people dependent on the government. Well, that seemed a bit odd to me, since Doug LaMalfa and his family are dependent on rice subsidies to the extent of millions of dollars.
Right.
Finally, this week, Brian Dolly, who you probably know running for the Assembly, has withdrawn his name from the list of endorsements of Doug LaMalfa. And the reason, of course, is that the LaMalfa campaign is under criminal investigation by the Federal Election Commission for election fraud in the primary relating to the website that they claim somebody else had put up when in fact they had put it up. And you know, this Brian Dolly's removal of his name from the endorsement list is really just a continuation of what happened after the primary. There were 8 of us in the primary. 2 of the people in the primary have now endorsed me, including a Republican, but none of the people that were in the primary have endorsed Doug LaMalfa. And I think that says a lot, and I think it does relate to this Federal Election Commission investigation and what happened there. Now, we have a real mess in Washington, D.C. I mean, we're in gridlock. And something's got to be done about that. This district we're in today can really help by sending the right person to Washington, D.C. to fix the problem. We don't need somebody who's beholden to special interests or political parties. We don't need people who sign pledges that ties their hands so they can't forge compromises, and in fact causes them to vote against the best interest of the people in the district at times.
Yeah.
We don't need someone who claims to be one of us when in fact he's a millionaire whose family is taking millions of dollars in subsidies that none of us get. So we need somebody to go to Washington that will fight for the people of the district. We need someone who will straighten out the mess we have in 2013. And let me be specific about this. We are heading for what people have called the cliff at the end of the year, with the Bush tax cuts expiring and the sequestration, where massive cuts across the board are going to automatically go into effect. Come 2013, there's going to be a great opportunity to fix our government. And everybody's going to have some skin in that game, and I think it is an opportunity to really get our government back on track, and I want to be in Washington, D.C. to be part of that solution. I know the tax code, I know what's wrong with the tax code, and I know how we can fix the tax code. But also, with these cuts across the board, it's going to be unfair to really vulnerable groups of people like our seniors and our children. And we need somebody in Washington, D.C. with compassion that will see that the pain from these cuts is shared by everybody and not focused just on these really vulnerable groups. And that would be me. We need to save Social Security and Medicare in just the fashion we have today. And we can do that. We need to protect women's rights and stop this. We thought that these rights were established, and now they're under attack again. We have to stop that attack. And you know something? We've got to balance the budget. And we can do that, but we can't do it just by severe cuts. We've got to do it by a balanced approach. And we can do that by closing tax loopholes without raising marginal tax rates, but just closing loopholes and eliminating deductions that are only there for special interests, but not just giving that money away, taking that money and using it to balance the budget. Vote for Jim Reed in 2012 in November. Thank you. All right, I'm going to take a few questions. And there's a gentleman with his hand up here.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask you, what is your position on the veterans? It's very hard for the veterans to get taken care of. My men are dying out here homeless, and they're veterans, and they fought many years, and they're dying homeless in front of this old post office out here. And Mr. Wally Hager won't even accept my phone calls, and that the MAFA, he's too busy collecting $6.4 million in subsidies to answer my phone.
All right, I don't know if everybody heard the question, but basically the question is, what are you going to do for our veterans who are not being treated very well, and in particular, when he tries to contact Wally Herger or Doug LaMalfa, they ignore him? First of all, we absolutely owe a debt to our veterans, particularly those that we've asked to risk their life overseas. We've got to treat those people right, and we can. Basically, the model is World War II. We've got to educate those military personnel. Now, one of the things about our military that I dislike right now is we have so much of our technical stuff that's done by the military done by independent contractors rather than our own troops. So what we have is our troops coming home from the war zones without any skills like they would have if they were airplane mechanics or tank mechanics or cooks or whatever it is. We owe those people a duty to educate them so that they can get back into society and be effective members of our population. Yes, I'd like to say
My guys simply qualify for benefits, go through Oakland, California. Oakland turns them down on something. This didn't take place in, can you prove it? You know, within the military, in other words, it's not service related. Then come and get sent to Lincoln, Nebraska, and they find that it is service related. It's just a delaying tactic, and these people are dying. This is my concern. This is, I went to Wally Hager's office, and some young kid told me Wally would call me back and talk to me about it. Never did. And I just think that's wrong when somebody makes a promise to a constituent and then doesn't follow through. Will you keep your door open if we elect you private citizen to come talk to you.
Don't let the train go by. Before I answer.
Did you hear my...
I heard it. It's obviously very frustrating to our veterans who apply for benefits, treatment, etc., and they're either turned away or not taking, not given immediate attention, and that's something we got to fix. And if I go back to Washington, D.C., I will make sure that our veterans programs are properly funded so that our veterans get immediate attention and don't have to go on a long waiting list or go to some other facility like you suggest to get the actual treatment. Thank you.
But not if. When.
Yeah, there you go. All right, I'm willing to take any other questions if anybody has any.
Can I have one of those?
Sure.
Thank you.
We've got signs here. If you want to take a lawn sign home, just let us know who you are and where they're going to be so we can pick them up later, after the election.
Mr. Reed, if you get into Congress, don't let them flip Social Security and Medicare. Don't let them even talk about it.
One of my strongest things that I'm committed to is saving Medicare and saving Social Security just as it is now.
It doesn't even get on the table.
And if you have seen my bumper stickers, it either says Save Social Security or Save Medicare.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Great. And you know, as far as these buttons, a lot of you have Save Medicare buttons on, but you know, the most popular button I have is Regulate Wall Street, Not Women. Okay. Does anybody have any further questions, or we can call it a day here? Yes.
You spoke a little bit to ending the gridlock. How will that be done?
All right. One of the biggest problems that is causing gridlock today, and I sort of touched on this, but virtually every representative signs a pledge of how they're going to vote in advance. To me, that's just wrong. I don't think anybody should be signing pledges because it ties your hand. It doesn't allow you to forge a compromise. And as we know in the case of Doug LaMalfa, it sometimes even makes you vote against the best interest of the people in the district. For instance, in one of the last things he did as a state senator before he resigned, he voted against AB 1492. And I talked about this briefly in the debate, but 1492 was clearly a law that was going to benefit our district, was going to bring jobs to our district, was something any representative of this district should vote for. It was eliminating the timber tax on our timber industry, which makes us uncompetitive with other outside states bringing in timber. And it was going to shift that tax burden from the timber industry to the end user in the form of a 1% sales tax increase. And it was the right thing to do, and Doug LaMalfa voted against it. And the reason he voted against it is he had signed a pledge that's probably the most well-known pledge called the Norquist Pledge of no new taxes. And because it had a 1% increase on the sales tax, he was obligated to Mr. Norquist, who certainly isn't a Californian, he was obligated to Mr. Norquist to vote against what was obviously in the best interest of the people in this district. Now, if we get our representatives to say that they're not going to sign these pledges, it's going to open up the whole system, and we will be able to get back to where we were before these pledges became so common, and our government will function properly. All right, any more, or should we call it a day?
No, I'm gonna.
All right, one more.
At the last debate, I felt that Doug LaMalfa challenged you that if you were willing to compromise, and I understood you to say in that way to represent all the people, that was not leadership.
Well, let me just put it this way. And I'm just going to make this up, but let's say I have 3 things that are really important to me, okay? 3 things I really want to accomplish, and I won't even say what they are, but let's just say it's 3. And I realize I get back to Washington, D.C., and if I push equally hard on all 3 of these without any way of compromising on them, I'm not going to get any of them done. But if I give up 2 for the time being, say I put it over to next year to work on those other 2, I compromise on that, and I can get at least one thing done, then that is the way we should proceed, because at least we're moving forward. So it's wrong to say, you know, that that willingness to compromise or put your agenda off to a later time is not leadership. I think saying no to everything is a lack of leadership. Yeah. All right, I think I'm going to call it because this sun is getting really hot, and I'm going to melt any minute. But thank you again for coming, and thank the media also.